listening to I Am Dependency.
Yes, and we have on the line now Brandy Rodriguez. Brandy making her debut first time on I Am Dependency. Brandy Rodriguez is an activist, human rights defender, and of course, very much a part of the LGBT community. Brandy, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
How are you?
I'm great.
Thank you very much for joining us. Well, I'm sure you've been following the conversation.
Yes, very interesting, I must say.
Now, tell us a bit about yourself first, and then we get into, I'm sure you're familiar with Kwasi, who's in studio with us here.
Yes.
Right.
I work with the Ministry of Gender Affairs.
Right. Excellent. So, so tell us, Brandy, what's your role in all of this, and you know, and assisting Trinidad and Tobago to understand this situation?
Okay. Well, firstly, as a human rights defender, I work closely with vulnerable groups, especially persons from the LGBTQIA community and sex work. I've been doing this for since 2006, because well, actually since 1999, because I understand the need that the community has in terms of access to healthcare, stigma and discrimination, and the different form of violations that the community faces. And I always try to see how we could help, in terms of how could we document these, different form of violation, and what could we do to redress some of the issues that the community faces, because stigma and discrimination is there. It's not going anywhere, and there's nothing really much being done about it.
Let's start with the abuse and the alienation.
Mm-hmm.
How prevalent is that?
Well, it is very prevalent, I must say. In terms of the abuse does not actually come from, internally. It's an external thing. The stigma and discrimination is not an internal thing, because it's not you're being stigmatized, or the abuse comes from, other sex workers. It's not. It comes from persons who are accessing services. It comes from the hotel owners. It comes from the police. It comes from the persons who you have to, where you're living, because once they know that you're a sex worker, or they know your landlord knows that you pay rent even more. So the abuse starts in different ways. And, even getting a taxi, the taxi driver would tell you, well, they wouldn't take, regular one trip. They will have to say, you'll have to pay for the car because we're not going there. That's off route. These are the different forms of abuse that the community faces.
And of course, the issue of substance abuse would be very high as well.
Of course. Well, in terms of coping mechanisms, most of the times that substance abuse comes in for that, the coping mechanisms part of it, because of being isolated, because of depression, because of, having to do this job most of the time that, I want to sleep early tonight, I will, have to take a smoke, or I want to, as they would say, I want to, think, I want to, feel different. I would have to do this. And it's not like, we're very low on crack and cocaine, but we're very high on marijuana and alcohol drug use.
Brandy, what did you make of the conversation we had earlier? And is there anything you wanted to add or to respond to in terms of what was said earlier?
Okay, what I would add, I understand everybody's, point of view, and what we're missing, what the disconnection there is the human rights aspect. I think we all know that sex work is illegal. That is not said. That conversation is very silently said. It's the spoken word, but it's not said at all. And I think what we're missing is the human rights aspect of it, the human rights, the violations, and because at the end of the day, sex worker, they are humans too, and sex work is work at the end of the day. And that is not discussed, and I think more should be, a little more should be put into this on the human rights aspect of it and on the sex workers' point of view, because the information is out there. Sex work is not going anywhere. Sex work is going to be here to stay, and is either be going to talk about the prevalence of HIV. 30 years ago, sex work was, the persons that were into sex work was more prevalent to HIV compared to now. Now there's a lot more education and testing and support mechanisms in place where HIV is a lot less in the sex work is not affected by HIV anymore over the past 20 years compared to now, because we have sex workers who have been doing sex work who are HIV negative. And 20 years ago, we had a bundle of persons who were doing sex work who were HIV positive. So I think in some instance, the advantages, there's good disadvantages, but I would want to focus on more the human rights aspect of sex work.
So in that context, do you think that sex work should then be decriminalized or legalized?
It should be decriminalized, and then I would want to think not legalized, because it's not something that I don't know what the views are, and I don't know what Trinidad and Tobago, will be looking for in terms of sex work, because I won't be able to say, but I have a community that I have to always report to, and I've been doing a pretty good amount of work with them in terms of education, testing, accessing healthcare, and not enough is being done where a sex worker has to go and access health services in a public space. The stigma and discrimination there, not much is being done, but we know for sure that sex work ain't going anywhere. That is the disconnection there.
Brandy, so which means then that sex workers are because they are not protected by law, are basically fair game?
Yes, definitely. I think more of we know for sure that this is happening because we have persons who don't even know that they are sex workers and doing sex work. We have women who have what they call, vessels and blessers. They have 2 and 3 different people that they sleep around with to pay rent, for clothes, for this, for that, for different things. And when we ask them, are you a sex worker? Do you think that you define or call yourself a sex worker? No, I'm not a sex worker, because a sex worker only stand on the corner or work on the boathouse. And I think that's the disconnection there. There's a lot of this sex work that is going on, and person doesn't even know, well, hey, I'm a sex worker.
I want to ask Brandy a question, because this is a conversation similar to what Mr. Alexander and I were having earlier this week. And we were looking at the dynamic between the sugar daddies and the sugar babies. And we were saying within that relationship, as opposed to the zesters and blessers, there seems to be a sort of power balance, because with the whole sugar baby, sugar daddy concept is, probably I need to get my tuition paid. And, I may provide physical services or just companionship. Would you define or view that as a sort of prostitution as well?
Well, it is actually a form of prostitution, and when we start to understand what it is and what these people are getting themselves into, then we could see how we could get move further. Because at the end of the day, there are still different forms of violation. Because if you don't keep yourself looking a certain way and doing certain things, that money will be cut.
Yeah, as Randy Crawford said, if you keep it young, your song will always sing.
Yeah.
And that's so true. And what just mentioned, we've spoken with university students outside of Trinidad and Tobago, and I am sure it happens here too as well, where they engage in sex with sugar daddies so that they can pay their way through university.
Yeah, it's something that has happened over the time that is not being discussed. It's something that is going on. Because you don't stand on a corner or work in a brothel, you don't define yourself as a sex worker.
Right. And I can imagine as well, for someone who's deep into it, the consumption of alcohol and other drugs to numb the person. I mean, let's face it, man or woman, you sleep with 10 persons in one night, Brandy. That's a lot of strength.
It's a lot for you to do, and this is why they have to always, have some kind of substance to keep them going, and to have them meditate and not to think about the reality of what is actually happening, but then to have consequences in terms of how much could you use, because when you get too, if you go over the limit that you're accustomed to, you don't know what you would do. You may not have the negotiation of condom use, so you might not have the power to say, well, no, this is not what I want, this is not what I'm doing. So we always have to have conversations with sex workers or with the community about, we can't say, I can't tell you, well, no, this is not good or this is not right. What I can do is educate you as to what drug abuse is and what substance use is. So you have to sit down now and say, well, maybe this is what I'm doing. So this is what, I'm doing. I have to give you the information of what substance abuse is and drug use is. So you could sit down and figure out all on your own, that kind of a thing.
A final question from me, Brandy. What in your mind would be the ideal situation for persons who choose, I'm not talking about persons who are trafficked, but persons who choose to do sex work? What would be the ideal environment, you think, for them to work? Or is there an ideal environment?
I don't think there's an ideal environment, but what we find persons doing is that the persons will find they make it safer for them to be in the brothels. I make more money on the streets. I have more rights, when I do my own thing, when I put my ad on the newspapers. There's not really a safer environment, but what we do is try to educate you on the advantages and the disadvantages of each and every situation out there, so that you will be able to know what the risks are, what risk you're putting yourself into when you say, I would work from home. When you work from home, you bring in strangers into your home. You have to know that this is one of the risks that you're taking. When you work at the brothel, you could only work, for this amount of money. When you work on the streets, the risk of being on the streets and the police and all of that. So what we do is list the risk. And I don't think there's a safe environment, really. But if we get more human rights education, and that would protect these people, and the punitive laws that is out there, all around, just doing more bad than good. I think that's what we need to figure out, because persons are no longer staying in the shadows. They're getting out there and doing their stuff, and that is what the difference is.
All right.
Brandy, we'll of course have you in studio here one Sunday, and I hope we can have you accompanied by someone who's an actual sex worker, so they can take us through a journey, take us on a journey in the life, and the advocacy continues with you all. Before you go, are you in contact or advocating to any relevant institution here in Trinidad and Tobago, whether government or otherwise?
Yes, I sit on the board for Caribbean Sex Workers Coalition.
Right.
I'm a board member, and I'm also the CEO, actually, for the Trans Coalition, the president for the Transgender Coalition, which we work directly with the trans population that does sex work. And I'm also the executive director for the Trans Tobago Sex Workers Coalition. That was formed last year. We just about to be registered. I'm thinking that it's sometime this year we want to get registered, and also to have the local leg attached to the Caribbean, the regional leg, so that we could see how best we could work with these sex workers in the Caribbean.
All right. Well, Brandy, thank you very much for spending the time with us, and we will be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.